Để giới thiệu về nhân vật kể chuyện tức là Nguyễn Sao Mai. Cô Nguyễn Sao Mai từ Montreal đến là một nghệ sĩ kể chuyện và một diễn viên cũng như là một huấn luyện viên, tiếng Anh gọi là coach, với công việc kết nối nhiều nền văn hóa và nhiều lĩnh vực khác nhau. Là một thành viên lâu năm của nhóm ở bên Hồng Kông, bởi vì cô ta ở bên Hồng Kông thời gian thì thành viên của nhóm Hong Kong Stories. Cô đã trình diễn các câu chuyện có thật, đã hướng dẫn chương trình và hướng dẫn học sinh cũng như người lớn xây dựng những câu chuyện cho chính mình. Hiện cô là thành viên của nhóm kể chuyện ở Montreal gọi là Montreal Storytellers Guild. Cô tiếp tục phát triển theo chiều hướng chuyện hư cấu, kể chuyện hư cấu, và gần đây tổ chức chương trình Ngày Kể Chuyện Thế Giới 2025. Và ngoài sân khấu, cô từng làm hướng dẫn viên tại các di tích lịch sử như ở Pháp và dẫn tour đi bộ tại Hồng Kông, cũng như tham gia phim ảnh. Vốn là một luật sư, cô tốt nghiệp bằng cấp luật sư ở Đại học McGill ở Montreal. Cô mang đến cho chúng ta sự thấu hiểu sâu sắc về sự kết nối giữa con người và các mẫu chuyện. I'd like to move on to this storytelling feature and say a few words about the storyteller herself, who is Sao Mai Nguyễn. She is a storyteller.
Vietnam, in what is known today as the province of Lan Sơn, there is a mountain. And on top of that mountain is a rock formation. And if you look closely, it resembles a woman holding a child. Legend has it that a long time ago, war swept over the land. So the king summoned one man from every household to join the army. And so in one of those households, a wife and a husband embraced one last time. The wife said to her husband, "Promise that you will return to me, for I promise to wait for you." To which the husband replied, "I shall return, I swear." And as the husband joined the other men of the village, she picked up their child, climbed up the mountain to catch one last glimpse of her husband. And from that day on, every day, she picked up their child, climbed up the mountain, and looked towards the horizon. Where is he now? Will he come home? Years passed. And still she waited. The mountains took pity on her, and in single file they traveled along the coast to search for her husband. They still form today the mountain range called Zhou. Still, she waited. 9 dragons swam across the rivers from north to south, hoping to bring back good news to her, but alas, they too were unsuccessful. So they stayed in the south, and they still form today the 9 branches of the Mekong Delta. And so you see, the landscape of a country was formed in response to a woman's hope and longing. 1,000 years passed, and still she waited. Her body... Now this song, phút, I must have listened to it about 100 times preparing for this show. For those of you in this room who know this song, which I imagine is most of you, then you're probably thinking she's crazy. For those of you who don't know this song, excuse me for looking in your direction, Catherine, but it is a very long song. 18 minutes is the short version. And I love it. The more I listen to it, the more I love it. Which was not the case when I was a little girl. When I was 4 or 5 years old, my parents listened to this song on their CD player. I didn't know yet how to skip songs. And my attention span would only last for about 30 seconds. I would hear the drums of war, the colorful war banners, the horses neighing, and I tuned the rest out. Just as I tuned out all the adult conversations at the adult dining table, every weekend family dinner and Christmas party. But as the years passed, I started to understand a little bit more of what's going on, what they were talking about, and it didn't seem so boring anymore. Especially the parts that started with, "Oh yeah, that reminds me of the time when." And something extraordinary would always finish that sentence. And so, year after year, I would collect these little tidbits of family history, and I put them together on the canvas of my mind. And it became a mosaic of our collective memory. And when I look at this mosaic, that song that I had tuned out a long time ago, it started to play again. Nơi phía nam xưa núi ai bế con mai đứng chờ như nước non xưa đến. Who is that up there, waiting yet again, like this land and country have been waiting, then and now? In 1954, Vietnam was divided in two at the 17th parallel. The North was communist, the South non-communist. And that was the beginning of a civil war that would last until 1975, 21 years. Now I say civil war, but there were bigger, more powerful countries involved. So the North was supported by China and the USSR, the South mainly by the United States of America. This war would be known in the West as the Vietnam War. Every generation in my family that came before me was affected one way or another by this war. On my dad's side, both my grandparents were from the North, but in 1954, when the North became communist, they went to the South. They emigrated to Saigon and settled there. My grandfather became a member of the South Vietnamese Air Force. Every time he left on a mission, my grandma would wait for her husband to come home. A mission would last, 1 or 2 days? But I bet it felt like 1,000 years to her. She must have wondered often, will he come home? Where is he now? After many years serving in the Air Force, my grandfather retired, joined the reserve force, and he started flying civilian airplanes, and that must have been such a relief for my grandmother. One day, he was supposed to come home from work at 7 p.m. Dinner's ready, the 6 children were getting hungry. 8 p.m. He's late. 9 p.m. Dinner's cold now. 10 p.m. An officer arrived to announce that her husband was not coming home. Even though he was flying a civilian airplane, it was still shot down. From one day to the next, my grandma went from being a housewife to the sole breadwinner to 6 children. In 1975, when she knew that the South would lose the war, she bribed her way for herself and her 6 children to get to the airport. And they fled in one of the last airplanes to leave the airport before it was bombed. They eventually landed here, in Ottawa. They settled in the Walkley area, Hetherington Road. One by one, the children finished their studies, left home to build a life on this new continent. My grandma remembers the last time she saw her husband in her dreams. It was the day their youngest son graduated from university. She said she had a feeling of mission accomplished towards her husband. I hope my grandpa found a way in that dream to say to her, thank you. You did your best, and you did well. On my mom's side, both my grandparents were doctors, surgeons in the South. After serving in the army as a surgeon, my grandpa eventually became the director of what was the biggest, most modern hospital in Saigon at the time, nhà thương Trải. But that meant that when the South lost the war, he was perceived as a threat to the new communist government because he was in a position of authority and influence. One day, he went to work, he was arrested, and brought away. He did not come home from work that day, and my grandma did her fair share of waiting. No one from the authorities would let her know where her husband had been taken, so she had to search for him. And I can imagine her knocking on doors, asking government officials, where is he now? And the unspoken question, will he come home? In the meantime, she was no longer allowed to practice her profession. Yet she still had to find a way to bring food to the table to her 3 children, find shelter for them, and find a way for them to escape this country that was no longer a safe home for them. Eventually, my grandpa did come home. He had been imprisoned with other political prisoners. But I think that for my grandma, those years of hardship and heartbreak shaped her indelibly, just like the rain and the wind shaped the body of the stone lady of Lancia. Bao tháng năm lôi cuốn, bao tuyết sương quen giữa đời, như ước mơ xuyên kiếp. As the years roll through our lives, the seasons change. The snow melts, the fog lifts, just like our dreams and desires fade away in the face of our destiny. Now, my grandparents' stories are pretty epic. But for me, growing up, when I went to visit my grandma in Ottawa, she was simply Banoi, Dad's mom. And she lived in a tiny apartment in a residential home. And when we opened the door to her apartment, there was this divine smell that would greet us. She was cooking dinner for us. And then we'd sit down to dinner, and in the kitchen, which was also tiny kitchen, there was this huge pot of pho soup that must have been simmering there for the last 12 hours. And we sit down to dinner, and I still remember her instructions to my dad. You guys have to finish this, okay? Because I don't have room in my tiny refrigerator to store the leftovers. So, which I don't think was true, by the way, because the next day she would ask to go to the supermarket to fill her fridge again. So something wasn't quite adding up. But anyway, there I was in front of my bowl of soup. I remember forcing myself to finish this bowl because I didn't want to hurt her feelings, and I didn't want my dad to have to expand his stomach even more to finish my leftovers, right? So I remember my memories of pho. It's delicious, but it's also laced with anxiety. And on my mom's side, well, I would visit my grandparents, Bangai, every weekend. And I would sleep over every weekend. And every Saturday morning would start with lessons with my grandma, Bangai. First of all, geography lesson. I knew about the mountain range Zhongsheng and the 9 branches of the Mekong Delta long before I ever heard of the Rocky Mountains or the St. Lawrence River. Then came history lessons. I could recite by heart, in chronological order, all the ruling dynasties in Vietnam. Ngô Đình Lê Lý Trần Lê Nguyễn. Long before I ever heard of Jacques Cartier or Johnny McDonald. Then came dictation. I did not like dictation. Okay? I already had my brain full of complicated English spelling and then hundreds of French exceptions in grammar, and now I had to make space for Vietnamese homonyms and other dictation traps. Thoại, nghệ, đình. It's Sunday morning, please. But now that I have children of my own, I appreciate just how much effort it must have been for my grandma to sit me down every Sunday morning for lessons. Oh, but trust me, she had her ways. I remember once my dictation was on all the types of potatoes that grow in Vietnam. And she told me that if I do well, she promises she will we'll walk to the Vietnamese supermarket on Côte des Neiges, Kim Phat, and we'll buy all the potatoes that we see there. And so we spent the afternoon baking bánh khoai mì, cassava cake, making taro sweet soup, chè khoai môn. We ate a lot of potatoes that day. And I think upon those memories fondly now, but I don't think I enjoyed every moment while I was living through them. And that's mostly because I was quickly becoming what we call a teenager. And a teenager, by definition, will rebel against everything that the adults in their lives represent. The more you show to them that you care about something, the likelier they're going to reject it. So, I never asked Banoi for her recipe to make pho soup. I saw myself becoming a career woman. I will not have time to simmer soup for 12 hours. Are you kidding me? No way. And all of this information, this knowledge that Banoi was giving me about Vietnam, about this country all the way across the world that I had never visited, how was that going to help me get the grades I needed to get into a prestigious university? No. So, with time, remember that mosaic of our family history. I put a veil over it. Not because I was ashamed of it. I just didn't have any use for it. But little did I know that by turning my back to those stories, I could no longer tap into the strength and the courage that those stories spoke of. Until one day, I needed those stories. I had to call upon them, and they came galloping back. They were just there for me. I will ask the organizers if we stop for 10 minutes or if I go on. Go on.
Go on.
Yes?
Yes.
It's
Go
up
on.
to you. I'm standing at the edge of the water. The water's deep, I can tell. It is dark all around me. I'm holding a 6-year-old girl in my arms, and I know that I have to throw her into the water, but I can't bring myself to do it. So slowly, gently, I lower myself down, and I lower her into the water when I hear, "Cut!" And the director walks over to me. "So Mai, you are supposed to pitch her into the water. What's wrong?" And I wanted to answer, it's against natural instincts to have this little body clinging to you and then pitching her into deep, dark water. We're filming a historical reenactment of the Vietnamese boat people's story. The video follows a family's journey at sea. I'm in the role of the mother. So this family is crammed into the hull of a boat, and they're approaching land. It's Malaysia. Finally, they've arrived. They've survived. But the Malaysian Coast Guards refused to let the boat dock because the refugee camps were already overcrowded. So the captain decides to sink his boat on purpose to force the Malay to accept them, even if that means some people may drown in the process. So in this scene that we're filming, the boat is drowning. The dad jumps into the water, then yells at the mom to throw him their daughter for him to catch. The set for this scene is relatively simple. We're in the diving section of the pool, so there were diving boards above us. And right at the edge of the pool, they built a big wooden wall. So on one side is the ocean, on the other side is the hull of the boat. And in that board, they cut out a square. That's the window looking into the hull of the boat. So my starting position is near the window, my little girl. And when the director says, "Action," the dad jumps from the diving board. He surfaces right under the window. Me and my girl, we run towards the window. I pick her up and I throw her through the window into her dad's arms. Now, when I auditioned for this role, I did not think about the technicalities of throwing a child through a hole in a wall, right? I was just thinking, I want to be a part of this. My mom was among the 2 million Vietnamese people who left their country after the war. The story of her survival at sea was part of family dinner since I was a child. With time, it weaved itself into my own identity. It's a story that I was ready to share with the world. But there was another layer to this. filming at the end of 2016. Do you remember what was going on in 2016? 10 years ago. It's a lot. First, in June, there was Brexit. Then leading to November 2016 was Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. And in both cases, anti-immigration discourses were being used for political gains. And I could feel this creeping anxiety. Are these discourses coming to Canada too? I mean, we're not that far away. There was this feeling that my sense of security and belonging in the only country that I've ever known as home was now jeopardized. Because whenever the sympathy will run out for whatever group it is people decide to categorize me into, whenever the tide will turn and the sympathy will run out, things are not going to be okay anymore. And I was scared. And I did not know how to respond. And then this project came along. We were going to be a bunch of second-generation immigrants acting what our parents and grandparents had been through to come here. And I thought, okay, count me in. This will be my response. And so I prepared myself meticulously for this scene, for this role. But I also knew that a large part would depend on how well I connect with the little girl, right? So the first time we met, I sat down to color with her, then we started making fun of faces at each other, and then the ultimate bonding experience, playing monster in the changing rooms. But then I had to stop being silly for a moment to get my hair done, put my makeup on, and she watched me transform into a Vietnamese woman of the 70s. She tilted her head, and she climbed onto my lap and snuggled into my arms. And I held her close. I smelled the back of her little neck, and I thought, oh, my girl, now we're ready. But when the time came for me to throw her into the water, couldn't do it. I froze. And the director is not impressed. So, while we were preparing for the second shot, I tried to refocus, tried to get back to what my character's intentions are. And for that, I go back all those years to the family dinners when I sat wide-eyed listening to my mom's story. It was September 1978, typhoon season. Mea was 15 years old. At the time, many families were looking for any way to leave the country because the living conditions were very difficult. And there was this unique opportunity for my mom to leave the country. Her uncle was a sea captain, and he was asked to be the captain for a boat of refugees that were leaving the country. And because he's the captain, he was allowed to bring some family members. And for some reason, there was one place left. And my grandma asked that her daughter, my mom, be offered that place. Because then she could leave under the protection of her uncle, the captain. They were 345 on that boat that was meant for half the amount of people. So they were stacked up into 2 stories under the hull of the boat. And the deck, it was so heavy, the deck was very close to the surface of the water. They left from the port of Mỹ, headed towards the Philippines, or at least towards international waters where they hoped that a boat would find them. But the typhoon found them first. Mom remembers that the waves were like towering walls of darkness ready to engulf them. and they had to climb each wave to the top before plunging back down, over and over, until eventually the propeller broke. And so they were floating, directionless, while the sea remained unforgiving. At some point, Mom wanted to leave the stench and the stuffiness down below, so she went on deck. And she was there when the waves crashed and swept right across the decks. And as a girl, I imagined her there, holding on to ropes and railings in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the darkness. And I thought, oh, Mom was so strong at the age of 15. That's the strength I want to bring to my character. All right, everyone ready for take 2? In position. Take 2. Action. The dad jumps. Me and my girl, we run. And I'm thinking, I have to be strong. It's our survival that's at stake here. And so I swoop her up. And I did pitch her, and she did fall into the water. I also banged her head against the window ledge in the process. And so the director comes running. The little girl's real mom is pulling her out of the water. She's bleeding. She has a cut over her brow, and they rush towards the changing rooms. And I'm left alone by the swimming pool. Well, that didn't go well. And so I rewind the scene to try and understand what went wrong. You know, when I lifted her up, her body was so tense. She became really heavy. I couldn't throw her properly. Maybe I was using too much strength, and it scared her. Maybe strength is not what fits my character best. And then it clicks. Mom was not yet a mom on that boat. I need to tune into what my grandma was going through. All right, so I'm grandma now. It's typhoon season. Pirates are roaming the coast, ready to intercept refugee boats. And when they board a boat, they steal everything, sometimes murder the men, often rape the women, and sold them away into prostitution. And I'm sending my 15-year-old girl on that boat, knowing that I won't be there to protect her. How did Grandma do that? In a way, she was pitching her daughter into the ocean. What was she thinking those last nights before her daughter boarded the boat, when she sewed a few American dollar bills into the inside of her daughter's pants? Then she took off her wedding ring. Here. Wherever you land, sell it and start your life. And she watched her daughter off and waited for news, if ever any news would come. No. I don't think strength is enough. It needs love, doesn't it? You need to be convinced that pitching your daughter into the ocean is the best that you have left to offer at this point in time. My little girl is back on set and she's avoiding all eye contact with me. We're ushered back into our starting position. Everyone ready? Take 3. Action. Dad jumps. We run. And I look back at my little girl, and she is staring at me with real fear this time. She's not pretending the terror. And something in her eyes also tell me that even though she is terrified, she has no other choice but to trust me. And that just breaks my heart. And so I go down on my knees and I cup my hands around her ears so that I can tune out everything around us. And I say to her, con ơi, mẹ thương nha con. Mama loves you, okay, baby? And she doesn't understand Vietnamese, but she must have caught the tone because when I picked her up, she folded her body lightly against me, and I was able to put her whole body through the window. And then I pitched her. And I watched her sink. She can't swim, and we didn't know that. The dad is frantically searching the water for her. For a moment, our eyes meet, and I can see him panic. Our girl, I lost her. Finally, she resurfaces, and Papa wraps his arms around her and sinks into the water to keep her afloat. And she puts her arm up towards me, opens and closes her fist to say, Mama, come, your turn. And we hear, cut. The director's voice reached us from very far. It pulled us back into the present. Because for a moment, we were that family. And my grandma in that story is Bằng. She passed away this year in January, just a few months ago. And she passed away 6 months after my grandfather passed away. Did their story end well, you might ask me? In a way it did. My grandma was buried next to my grandpa on the 16th of January, the day of their wedding anniversary. They are resting together now. And that is something. In Hồng Kông, the wife and the husband didn't get that. Based on the song, the husband eventually did come home after thousands of years. It's too late. She had been steadfast, she has been resilient, she has been strong, but now she is a rock. And so, even though both of them, husband and wife, they withheld their vow, but it doesn't mean that they can be living happily together. Growing up with legends like Hồng Kông, with my grandparents' stories, I'm more accustomed to bittersweet endings than outright happy endings. But I think if my grandparents were here with us today, they would be glad to witness some of my happy endings. And so for the time that we have left together, I will share with you one of those happy endings. Day 1. Our son, Olivier, was born on March 15, 2019 in Hong Kong. A lot happened in the last 12 hours. There were 9 hours of labor, then 2 hours of unsuccessful pushing. And I say unsuccessful pushing because baby was in back-to-back position, so it was very hard to push him out. And the nurse was getting more and more worried because the umbilical cord was around his neck and his heart rate was slowing down with every contraction. So they called in the doctor. The doctor performed an episiotomy and pulled Olivier's head out with a vacuum. That's called vacuum extraction. Thank goodness for my husband, Etienne. He was there all along, holding my hand, being calm. When Olivier came out, Etienne couldn't cut his umbilical cord like he had dreamed to. Olivier was blue, so the doctor had to proceed quickly, and then they rushed the baby out of the room. But all of that is forgotten now. I have my son on my chest. His hair is still wet, and his eyes are still closed. He was all curled up against me. I can feel his weight on my belly instead of inside it. And when they were pushing us into the postnatal ward, I felt like I was floating. You know, in prenatal classes, they told us that there is a word for this feeling of happiness and floating. It's called oxytocin. Now, when a woman's body is in labor, it also produces a hormone called oxytocin, so that when the baby's born, the mother will naturally feel love and care and attachment for this baby. And so that's why I looked at this wrinkly, slimy little thing, and I think that he is the most beautiful baby I've ever seen. Another thing they told us in the prenatal classes was how important it is to breastfeed your baby on demand, right? Why? Because a mother's breast milk is the most healthy option, hands down, for the baby. It has all the nutrients for a healthy development, and it boosts the baby's immune system. And so the WHO, World Health Organization, recommends that mothers exclusively breastfeed their baby for 6 months, and then continue breastfeeding until the baby's 2 years old. And so as soon as Olivier opens his little eyes and starts to sniff around, I latch him onto my breast, and I think, motherhood, I've got this. Day 2. Actually, I don't know when day 2 started. I have not slept all night. You know, the nurses had warned me, since Olivier was born by vacuum extraction, his head's sensitive. He's gonna be a little grumpy. Well, I found out that night that a grumpy baby means a baby who cries as soon as you put him down. Right? Now, I'd like you to visualize the postnatal ward in this Hong Kong hospital for me. It is divided into dormitories. Each dormitory had 6 beds, and they were separated by curtains. Mother and baby do not have private rooms in Hong Kong because there simply is not enough space. You know, there's the space is a luxury there. Now watch me as I put down Olivier into his crib. And right away, echoes of babies crying. As Olivier just woke up 5 other babies and 5 other mothers. And I could feel them glaring at me through the curtains. Another detail worth mentioning is the father cannot stay with mother and baby throughout the night. There's no space for him. So Etienne had 2 visiting hours. 1 hour at noon, a 2nd hour at 6 p.m. At 7 p.m. sharp, he had to leave. Broke his heart, but that was that. So what did I do? Throughout the whole night, I kept my baby on my chest, and I kept my eyes as wide open as I could because I was terrified that if I doze off, I'm gonna drop my baby. Day 3. We were going to be discharged. Yes, finally. Now Etienne is going to be able to help me all day and all night. Right before we were discharged, the doctor asked me, "Did you have a poop yet?" Who, me? I was busy counting how many poops my baby was having. I had to note the color, the texture. No one had mentioned I needed to pay attention to my poop as well. Well, no, I haven't pooped. Ah, then you must be a little constipated. Let me prescribed uses laxative syrup. Make sure you eat lots of fruits and vegetables, dragon fruit, bananas. Drink prune juice and drink lots and lots of water. Lots of water? Oops. I've been doing the exact opposite. You see, I do things by the letter because I want to do things well as expected of me. So, when I received the hospital list with all the items I need to bring to the hospital, I took out a pen and I diligently put check marks next to each item that I put in my hospital bag. And that list said a cup. So I chose what I thought was the optimal cup. Stainless steel, lightweight, small, would fit well into the bag, would not take up too much space, thinking like a local Hong Konger. Well, I discovered after giving birth that to fill my cup, I had to walk to the reception where there was a water jug. Now remember, I just gave birth, episiotomy, stitches, maternity pad, hospital gown, getting out of the bed, put the baby down. No. So I stayed put and I rationed my water. Throughout the night, I kept my baby on my chest and I sipped my water. Well, turns out that list should have at least said a water bottle if I was expected to drink lots and lots of water. Anyways, it's okay. I just received clear instructions. I like that. As soon as we get home, Etienne rushes out to the supermarket to buy dragon fruit, banana, squash, prune juice. I sit down on the sofa. I latch Olivier onto my breast. All will be well. Except all was not well. By the end of the day, I was having what we call engorgement. Anyone knows what that is? That's when the baby is not latching correctly. And so milk can't come out. So the baby's sucking and stimulating milk production, but the milk can't come out. And so your breasts get bigger and bigger. They become huge and hard and they hurt. And it makes it even harder for the baby to drink. And so stimulating more milk production. Milk cannot come out. You get it. Things are not going well. Olivier was kicking, biting. His little arms were flailing all over the place. He was becoming a very grumpy baby. And I sure was becoming a grumpy mama. I have been told to feed on demand. What if my baby is demanding all night long? It means sitting on my stitches all night long with an engorgement problem that kept getting bigger. So, Etienne wanted to help in any capacity that he could, but what could he do? So as soon as the sun rose on day 4, I asked for a midwife house visit ASAP. And the midwife confirmed that, indeed, Olivier was losing weight because he was not having enough milk. There you go. I just failed at my first task as a mom. I was supposed to breastfeed my baby for 2 years. I couldn't even manage 4 days. The midwife gave Etienne a syringe with a tiny tube to feed Olivier formula. Right? So he was feeding a few drops at a time. That way Olivier won't get used to a bottle's very effective nipple and not get back to mine, right? So I watched as Olivier gulped down his formula. He let out a contented burp and immediately fell asleep in his dad's arms. And yes, there was guilt, but I was also so relieved. Thank God for Papa. Now, right before the midwife left our apartment, she asked, "Did you have a poop yet?" I dutifully reported that I have been eating dragon fruit, bananas. Bananas, she asked. Isn't that the opposite of what you want? Oof. There must be a lot in there right now. You must be very constipated. When you go for a poop, I recommend that you take a maternity pad and hold it against your stitches so that when you push down, it doesn't open up your episiotomy wound and break the stitches. Well, suddenly a poop sounds really scary. Day 5. Etienne goes to the supermarket and buys dragon fruit, squash, prune juice, no bananas. Day 6. I'm due for my postnatal appointment, and the nurse checked to see I was healing correctly. She was satisfied enough. Right before I left her office, she asked, "Did you have a poop yet?" No. Now it's getting urgent. If you don't have a poop within the next 2 days, you need to go to the emergency. Now I have a deadline to poop. Day 7. But he's sleeping. He's full and content with my milk. Yes, success, finally. I put him down into his crib. He doesn't wake up. Success again. Oh, I have to build on this momentum. It's now or never. Because I take my poop deadline very seriously. I do not want to go to the emergency. Remember feeding on demand? Translation, I need to breastfeed every 2 hours or so. Now if I go to the emergency and tell them I'm constipated, how far up the waiting list do you think I'll be? I'll be stuck there for hours, days even. And Etienne can give Olivier formula, it'll be fine. But without a baby stimulating my milk production, I will dry up. My milk production will dwindle away. But I have worked so hard, so painfully hard to get my milk production up and running. I can't lose it now. But what's the other option? To bring my 1-week-old baby to the emergency with me? Who knows what he'll catch there? Just because his mama cannot poop. No, I shall poop. Close the washroom door. Pad ready. But it doesn't work. I can't do it. I just can't. And at the back of my mind, I have the midwife's voice going, push! And I couldn't push my baby out for 2 hours. And now same thing with this poop baby. And I'm saying to myself, relax. Relax, and you can do this. And that's when Olivier wakes up. What? Already? But I just cried. No more oxytocin left. My baby is crying to be held and fed and comforted, and I cannot care less. I can't do this motherhood thing anymore. Etienne is standing at the washroom door. He's the one rocking our wailing baby. He's looking at me cry on the toilet seat, and he says, "It's going to be okay. We'll find a way. We'll be okay." And you know what? He was right. Things were going to be okay. In the end, he suggested that I go to a private clinic. So I found myself in front of a doctor who gently explained to me what an enema is. I remember a mad dash to the end of the hallway, thinking, why on earth did they design washrooms here to be so far away when doctors here perform enemas? I remember a kind receptionist who went around looking for a spare pair of pants so I could go home. My little Olivier, and to Etienne, who has been my rock all along. They are waiting for me, and I am coming home.
Wow, that was what a journey. That was a great story.